What's up, fellow go-givers? Juwan Buford here, and I'm kind of keeping things low. It's first thing in the morning, and trying to get it in right quick before the significant other and the children wake up, and then the world starts making demands of me. You know what it is, right? So I want to talk about a conversation that I had recently with an entrepreneur, and it's a conversation that's come up repeatedly over and over again, which is why you know how I do it, right? When something comes up repeatedly, it's getting to the point it's redundant, I look to address it. And the conversation that we had involved launching his business, right? And what's required to be successful. And, you know, the gentleman had all the accoutrements of what it looked like to be a successful entrepreneur, right? He has the website, has a little bit of corporate backing, dressed the part, looked the part, had, you know, the brochures and had, had the checking account set up and the business structured, and, you know, maybe there were some other things missing, but the bottom line is, you know, on the outside like a grown adult. And he had been in business for more than 30 days and maybe even longer than that. And but when I spoke with him, I found out something. What I found out was that the gentleman hadn't taken on a client yet. Hadn't taken on a single customer in 30 days plus. And I looked at him, and I didn't want to be harsh. I didn't want to be mean. So I just kind of, you know, said, congratulations, glad you chose entrepreneurship. But then I couldn't leave the conversation alone. I couldn't let it sit there. And I looked at him and I said, man, do you really need this to work? Like, do you really need it to work? Have you burnt the bridges? Are you in a situation where this business has to work, or else you're going to be on the curb? And thankfully the answer was no, right? He had a backup plan, had some other things going on. I said, good. I said, so that way when I share, I need to share, hopefully the sting isn't as tough. And I said to him, man, you don't have a business yet. You don't. You exist on paper, but you're more or less moving like a paper tiger. You haven't launched yet. And he kind of looked at me like, what do you mean? I've got my website and got these brochures, and I've been having these conversations. I've been doing this, that, and the other. And I asked him, I said, how many people do you talk to per week? Like, how many people do you think you interview on a weekly basis about your business? In other words, you have taken the time, you've leaned in, communicated your value prop enough where someone's willing to take 5-10 minutes to learn about what it is you do. I think you may have said like maybe several times a week, right? I said, cool. Well, you're doing some activity. I like it. And I said, well, how many times, what's your goal? How many times is that happening per day? And he says, well, sometimes it happens once a day. Sometimes it doesn't. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, you full-time in this, right? He says, yeah, I'm full-time in this. And what I said was, I know you've been having conversations with these gurus, right? These people who are paid by these organizations to give you advice on how to successfully build your business. And I said, look, you're having a conversation not with a travel agent right now. You're having a conversation with a tour guide. I'm not a guru. I'm a guru. I'm an entrepreneur that has built businesses. And not part-time. I've been at this thing full-time, okay? I'm in a situation where if I don't kill, I don't eat. Sooner or later, the spigot gets turned off. There is no plan B. There is no job waiting for me. There is not any of those things. Fortunately, I've built a business that pays me an income whether I go to work or not, but there was a price that was paid to build that. But the bottom line is, I said, this is what I need to tell you. I want you to think about entrepreneurship like a rocket or like a plane taking flight, right? Especially when you're launching. Now, here's the thing. When a rocket is taking flight, when a plane is taking flight, it's getting off the ground, during its journey, where does most of the turbulence transpire, right? If you've ridden in a plane before, you know most of the turbulence transpires on takeoff. If you've watched anything involving rockets taking flight, you know most of the turbulence, most of the drama takes place on the takeoff because you're fighting gravity, right? You have to get enough momentum. You have to create enough velocity to defeat gravity to get off the ground, right? Because if you don't have enough speed, you're going to fall down. If you don't have enough speed when you're taking flight in the airplane, you're going to hit the trees, you're going to hit the poles, you're going to hit the buildings, right? You have to generate enough energy, enough force to defeat gravity so you can get to your destination. And then once you reach an altitude, a certain altitude, you can coast and you don't have to expend as much energy to keep the ball going. Think about it like pushing a rock or pushing a car. Have you ever been in a situation where you've had to push your car or somebody else's car? In the beginning, it's tough as hell. Heaven bid, don't let it be a truck. It's tough. You're pushing and the thing is like moving inches and you're like exerting all your effort. You're probably breaking a sweat, right? Just getting the vehicle to move a couple feet. But at some point, when the vehicle starts moving, you're not using every bit of energy that you have in your body. You're not pushing yourself to the limit. You're not putting on this like incredible strain, not putting your body in that type of strain. And once the vehicle gets moving, I mean, you might even be able to just use one arm to keep that vehicle moving. You might be able to use like just one hand and arm, right, to keep it pushing, right? And then you know, if you're by yourself, you move over to the side, the driver's side, the door is open, and then you can grab that steering wheel and use a same relatively light amount of force in comparison to what you were exhibiting before, and turn that steering wheel and keep the car moving to get it up the driveway or into the mechanic, whatever the case may be. You know what I mean, right? That's entrepreneurship. And the bottom line is, I told him, there's no way in the world, you don't have enough velocity. You don't have enough activity. In the beginning, entrepreneurship is about like really, really intense activity. It's about iteration, doing things over and over again so you can understand what works. So you can understand approaches that work. So you can understand how to communicate the value prop in a way that works. It's about effing up. You're going to fail a lot more than you win, but that's good because the failures are designed to teach you and to help you learn, right? I've heard people say you either win or you learn. And that's what it's about in the beginning. It's about learning, a lot of learning. It's about understanding once you get someone in front of you and they're willing to hear the presentation, what are the triggers, what are the words, what's the approach, right? It's about fulfillment. Okay, once you've acquired a client, how do you fulfill properly? Even if you have all the smack and technology in the world at your disposal, there's still a level of human involvement that needs to be there to ensure that you have a happy customer and client so you can get something called referrals, right? And the bottom line is most entrepreneurs, you're not putting forth enough activity. I shared with him. I was very honest with him about, you know, what that looked like for me. And in particular, what it looked like for me following my divorce a handful of years ago, right? What that looked like for me was I was in a situation where I'd given up the vehicle, pretty much just had to close my back. I had another parent that was hostile to me having a relationship with my children. Didn't have a roof over my head. That was the situation, right? I didn't want to fight over materials. I didn't want to fight over things. I didn't want to fight over cars. I didn't want to fight over anything. I was like, I just want my children. And I knew just how dastardly, you know, the situation can be when dealing with, you know, bitter and upset women. I knew I was going to be in a pitched battle over my children. I knew I only had like a month, maybe a month and a half to get my ish together, to get back to earning grown adult income. And this is what I shared with him. I woke up in the morning, oftentimes at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. And from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., sometimes even 8 a.m., I would have interacted with about 30, maybe 50 people on LinkedIn. Yeah, 30, 50 people to start the day, right? And if you know I was interacting with 30 to 50 people, if I was messaging and liking and responding to likes and all this other fun stuff, you know how many people I really was touching in that morning, right? That's what was going on. This was before I even hit the door. It was mandatory. From 9 until 11, I was cold calling. Back then we had YP. I don't know what they call it now. I was collecting business cards at coffee shops that I literally had to lift to or walk to, right? And collecting business cards. I mean, I was calling at least 20, 30 people. Easy, right? So by the time 11 o'clock had rolled by, I had probably interacted with just under, I don't know, man, I probably interacted with just under close to 100 people. And then I would walk out the door and I would door knock. And I would knock on the doors of at least 10 business owners, at least 10, right? I did what I had to do because my goal was to launch. My goal was to have so much activity that would be impossible for me not to be successful. That was the goal. It wasn't to be successful. It was to have so much activity, to generate so much velocity that there was no way I was not going to be able to get off the ground, right? And I did that every single day. On Sundays, of course, business owners are closed. I wasn't making the cold calls and I wasn't knocking on doors majority of the time because, like I said, a lot of businesses are closed then. But I was still doing my follow-up. I was still on LinkedIn getting it in. There was a key reason why I went from basically no following to about 30,000. Most of the groundwork for that was done in the beginning, posting content of value that was helpful to people as opposed to trying to sell people, and then interacting with people who took an interest in it, and then reaching out to people and apply, et cetera, et cetera. It's not a strategy session, but more a framework that I want to give you. That's what launching looks like. I did that every single day for about a month to 2 months. Nobody knew. I had my Airbnb situation. I had figured out ways to get around in the community I was in. I was able to show up to the office. I started, upgrading my attire again and buying professional looking clothes. I started, being able to afford what I needed for in terms of diet, and I started exercising and running because in order to have that type of energy, you got to take care of yourself, right? I wasn't sleeping much. Hey, it is what it is. But literally, that was my modus operandi every single day. I would meet with individuals after that in the afternoon for a period of time, right? So 2-3 hours out the day was dedicated to meetings, whether it be via Zoom or belly to belly, eyeball to eyeball. And that was it, right? That's what launching looks like, right? If you're not touching that many people, if you're not getting that many no's, if you're not getting that many rejections, because trust me, 80%, sometimes even 90% of the individuals whom I interacted with either slammed the door, said, no, I'm not interested, blocked me, whatever, right? All that fun stuff happened. But remember, the goal was not, quote unquote, to be successful. It wasn't to get a client. It was to have so much activity, there was no way I could fail at acquiring clients. It was about the volume. And I learned a lot. I was already a highly effective business development professional. I was already a highly effective salesperson. This activity was not brand new to me, right? But it even sharpened me even more so, where I firmly believe that's where I started to become elite within my ecosystem at what it is that I do, right? Because most of the people I was talking to were strangers. Yeah, I was getting referrals. Yeah, I was doing all these different things. But the bottom line is, like I said before, I didn't care where the prospect or lead came from. I was talking to any and everybody. I learned what people's pain points are. I learned what people's needs are. I learned what people were really interested in. I learned these things through that process, right? And your launch, as much as it's about taking on clients, it's also your beta testing, your stress testing, your business, your services, your product, and your stress testing yourself, all right? Too many of us as entrepreneurs don't want to deal with the stress. We're trying to avoid the pain. We're trying to avoid the hard. For me, the hard of failure was far worse than the hard stuff I had that needed, the hard stuff that needed to happen in order for me to be successful. I had to be willing to choose my heart. And if you're avoiding the stress, if you're avoiding the work, if you're trying to use technology and listen to these gurus who, quite frankly, I'm just gonna be real, that look, a person that is working a job or a gig or has worked in corporate America and never built a business up from scratch and had to kill to eat in order to eat, man, it's certain insights they're not going to have. It's a certain talk or conversation they can't have with you, because you cannot lead people where you have not gone, and you can't grow people in areas where you have not grown. Which is why I felt like I had to have this conversation, because I've seen a lot of people start up entrepreneurship endeavors, those who are close to me and those who I come across in passing, and it's like, man, the advice has been given out here. I'm like, where in the hell are you getting this stuff from? Like, go out here and get some doors slammed in your face. Stop giving a rat's ass about how people think about you. You spend so much time caring about people who would not show up to your funeral on a rainy day. I mean, seriously. Stop it. Stop concerning yourself with those people. And get out here and get some doors slammed, get some no's, get some rejection. Learn from those things. Learn why the rejection took place. Learn why someone said yes. Iterate, 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 iterate. Do the same thing you did as a baby when you were learning to crawl and walk. You had to go out there and bust your ass a lot before you could walk and begin to run. Entrepreneurship is no different. Why would you think you can come into entrepreneurship and earn hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and not have to go through the pain and heartache and hardship that any other entrepreneur is going through? There's no getting around this. There's no amount of technology that's going to help you sidestep this. You don't find out about success people there are no overnight success stories. You just find out about the people overnight. If someone is successful as an entrepreneur and they weren't born on third base or didn't have mommy and daddy to fund their little pet projects, trust me, they got it out the dirt. You're going to have to do so too. So anyway, I'm getting louder. I'm probably about to wake up my family here in a minute. But you can tell I woke up today and chose war, right? But as always, I celebrate success in advance. Goodbye for now.